Hey guys, so today I wanted to share an interview that I did with Dr. Doug Cowan and his son Dallas. They both run a brain performance center out of Phoenix, Arizona called Calm Waves. And I just wanted to talk to them about some interesting developments in the world of brain performance, specifically around technology. And so the two devices that I'm going to cover when you see this interview, the first one is going to be the CES Ultra, which is this little doohickey right here. And essentially what this does is it puts an electrical stimulation when you put it on your ears through the brain to make the brain work better. And we'll talk about the details of that in just a second. Personally, I've been using this thing for about 2 weeks. I bought it from them, from their website. So I'll include a link to that so that you guys can get that if you're interested in it. But I've noticed some really amazing results. So it's FDA approved for insomnia and anxiety, but kind of off label, right? Like outside of just what it's approved for. People have noticed things like better cognition, better memory, better focus. And we're going to talk about this as well, the ethics of using something like this for gaming, for example. It is enhancing people's performance in certain domains, similar to how Adderall might do, just on a lesser scale. If you guys are interested in that, I'll include a link to their website where you can get it below. And then the second technology you're going to hear about in this podcast is called Direct Neurofeedback. We're going to talk about what that is. Maybe you've heard of neurofeedback before, but direct neurofeedback has some differences. So we're going to cover those as well. There's more information about that on their website as well. I think it's a really interesting technology, especially with all of the revelations that have come about from the pharmaceutical industry and just the bad stuff going on with drugs like Adderall, modafinil, 5-Ence, you name it. You know, these are compounds that, yes, they help cognitive performance, but at a serious cost to long-term physical health and mental health. And so I think when you can find ways to optimize your cognitive performance without having to use these substances or any substance at all, and you can permanently alter the wiring of your brain so that it functions better overall, that's really exciting to me. So we're going to dive into some of that stuff on this podcast. I'll include a transcript. I'll include show notes for you guys if you want to look at that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to follow the podcast because that's a new thing. I know I have a much bigger following on YouTube right now. If you guys just want to listen on the go, don't want to have to sit down and watch through a whole video, I would certainly recommend listening to the podcast wherever you guys listen to podcasts. So with that, let's get into the interview with the founders of Calm Waves, Doug Cowan and his son, Dallas. Okay, so I'm here with Dr. Doug and Dallas Cowan. Dr. Doug is the doctor, Dallas is Dallas, but it's a father-son team. And I met you guys through a virtual summit that I did for Zone Motion. And you guys got on there and you delivered what I thought was one of the best presentations. You guys covered some of the things that you're doing in Phoenix, Arizona. But I want to give you a chance kind of before we dive into the CES unit and the direct neurofeedback, which I know both of us are probably super excited to talk about. What's your background and what led you guys to establish this brain performance center called Calm Waves in Phoenix?
Well, I had been in the mental health field for 35 years, got licensed 35 years ago and got my doctorate 35 years ago. And about 30 years ago, I don't know, maybe a little bit more, I was introduced to this whole world of neurofeedback. I had been running half a psychiatric hospital. I was doing basic medical model mental health treatment and pharmaceuticals and, typical kinds of things. And I was talking to a bunch of parents at a support group for ADD parents of ADD kids. There are probably 100, 150 people in the room. And somebody asked me what I thought about this treatment they'd seen on TV the night before called Brainwave biofeedback as a treatment for ADHD. And in front of all these people, I said, it doesn't work. And she said, how do you know it doesn't work? And I actually said this. I said, because I know everything there is to know about the treatment of ADHD, and I don't know anything about that, so it doesn't work. And then the next thing she said was really, really good for me to hear. Doug, we love you, but your ignorance of a subject doesn't make you an expert in that subject. And there we go. So I said, all right, I'm an idiot. And the next day I called the guy who'd been on TV. He was great. Siegfried Hoffmer said, let's have lunch. Drove down to LA and met him. A week later, I'm in a training program And 2 weeks later, I've got my first Brainwave biofeedback system. And that was 30 years ago. That's what I've been using in a clinical practice since back then. Got introduced to other generations of neurofeedback training since then. The last 10 years, I've had a clinical practice in California using what we would call direct neurofeedback. It's like neurofeedback generation 4. Very effective. So this whole full clinical practice of people with anxiety or depression or head trauma or ADHD or whatnot. And then for years, Dallas has been asking if I would consider moving from California to Arizona and using the same technology with business leaders and executives and athletes, professional athletes, for peak performance training. And then the day came where my youngest went off to college and we sold the house, and here we are. That's what brought us to Scottsdale.
I've been seeing my dad help a lot of people, and he was working in a small town called Tehachapi. And, people would come in with debilitating anxiety and he'd say they left with no anxiety. And, that's such a powerful thing for so many people, being able to step into an office and be able to do that. And then meeting athletes here in Scottsdale, or, just meeting people, they all have the same things that he was doing in training with. And I just was like, I want to learn how to do this skill set. I want to learn how to provide value to somebody, to go, no matter who they are, is they can be able to achieve more by taking away these interferences. One thing that we talk about all the time, no matter if it's an athlete or business person or whoever it is, but there's this great book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And in the book, Tim Galway has this formula, and it's performance equals potential minus interference. And it's a very powerful and simple formula. And so when we talk with somebody about this, we go, what are your interferences? And it might be anxiety, it might be head trauma, concussions, all of the things. My dad was going, hey, I'm getting people better at this, working on one side of the bell curve, making them normal. But we're like, what would it look like if we took people who are, you look day to day as being elite or, doing well, and making them even more elite? Like, what would that look like? So that was the whole theory behind it, was going, all right, what could we do? And these are all clinically graded technologies. These weren't things that you're going to get Instagram ads all the time for, or, all the things are like, is this really going to help me? Is this really going to work? These are all things that have been around for, as my dad says, 30 years, and in a clinical environment. So it was just more of getting it out into the marketplace to say, hey, you can use these things. You can do this. This is accessible for you, and there's science behind it. So that's what got me really excited about, having him come out to Scottsdale and just starting this, was just, what types of people could we help? How can we get this out there and make this accessible for people, and not just be in a clinical environment?
And you're coming at this from a athletic background.
Yeah, so I played college baseball, but did kind of professionally career, which is more of marketing and some branding stuff. Kind of taking about the storyline, like, well, what would it look like if you could make it where, and that's why we talk about brain performance. It's basically therapy in a way, but it's, people don't always want to go to therapy, but it's being able to say, how can we work on the hardware? How can we work on, what's going on in your brain, and take it out of a clinical practice environment where it's, white walls and, you're next to the cardiologist kind of standpoint, and make it more into a experience for the athlete or the executive. Make him more of a part of a community that's pushing something forward, not always going, something's wrong with me. And that's always been a big thing.
So I'm sitting here right now. You might be able to tell through the screen. I'm plugged in with my CES unit that I got from you guys, the call box.
That's great.
I got it going on continuous. I've been using it for, I think it's been about 2 weeks now. since I got it, and I've been using it almost every day. I might have skipped a day or two.
Okay.
And so I want to talk about this. What is CES and why should people care about it?
Well, we say the words really fast. CES, it's a CES unit, and nobody knows what that is except clinicians or people who own them. It's a cranial electrical stimulation device. So I don't want to get too sciencey, geeky. If I do, just sort of blink real hard and I'll stop.
You can get as sciencey and as geeky as you want.
All right. It's a 40 or 50-year-old technology. It's nothing new. It's just that there are a lot of these things, certainly in the category of what I would look at as electric medicine as opposed to pharmaceutical medicine, that they're just sort of pushed into this corner, and not a lot of people use them or know about them. Clinicians, a psychologist is 100 times more likely to say, hey, you need medicine, go see the psychiatrist, than to say, well, let's try a CES unit, see what you get, right? I mean, it's just the medical model. It goes right to pharmaceuticals. So a CES unit is FDA approved for the treatment of anxiety and insomnia, depression. It has off-label uses, but well-known and well-researched uses for post-traumatic stress disorder, learning disabilities, awareness, attention. It does a lot of things well. It doesn't do everything, but it does a lot of things well. So you have it on your earlobes. You could also you'll see in the kit, there's sticky things that you can stick on your body, and you can stick one on your forehead and one on your left wrist and turn it on, and the current will go different direction because they go pole to pole. So in your case, with on earlobes, the energy, it's an energy device. For those of you watching that have no idea what I'm talking about, it's an energy device that a very small amount of energy at 100 hertz, square waves, going from one earlobe through the middle of the brain to the other earlobe and back, alternating current back and forth. So what it's doing is it's activating, stimulating deep structures in the brain to get them to work better, more optimally as factory settings. So the part of the brain that causes anxiety calms it down. Part of the brain that causes fear, worry, maybe like certain kinds of emotional outbursts, even long-term chronic pain is caused by that same part of the brain. So it may have some impact on that. Like after a year, somebody's had spinal surgery or something, they can't find anything wrong, but their back still hurts. It's sometimes just the pain is like a phantom pain that's moved to that part of the brain. Sometimes it can help take that away. So those structures, it works with also deeper structures, even in the top of the brainstem. We like it with our athletes because they will talk about peaceful focus. Mm-hmm. So we have it over at a pitchers training center in North Phoenix that has worked with, I don't know, long years. They work with 300 professional pitchers, 150 are in the major leagues. I mean, it's a legit place. They have a couple of units available for their people right before they work out, like when they're rolling out, stretching and rolling out, they're wearing a CES unit, certainly before they throw off a mound and do a bullpen session. They're wearing that unit because they talk about being peaceful, focused, doing their thing. And surprising to me, when we started working with athletes, is how many athletes have anxiety. Certainly guys have all had their head banged up. They've all had concussions, but even back in the third grade, they got a concussion. So we work on that, but the number who have anxiety when they're playing, or anxiety before a game, or anxiety after a game, they can't go to sleep.
Mhm.
So the Calm box, the CES unit, is really great for helping them in that. But I've seen it help school kids with studying for tests, executives answering emails and reading for their job, whatever it might be. It's a very useful tool and a great value. And they only cost like $300, a little bit less even than that. And for the amount that you can get out of it, the amount of benefit you can get out of it, it's a bargain. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, I love hearing, I mean, I love people just trying it on, because everyone seems to have a little bit of a different reaction to it, whether it's more calm, more focus, less pain, all of those types of things. So it's always interesting to have somebody order one and go, what did you experience? Like, what happened? And then it's really cool to see the people and how they apply it too. Like you said, you apply it. Hey, I've got this continuous on, this is what I can, I use it in. I've got another buddy who bought it. He's a writer. He uses it when he writes. And then we've got guys in, playing for the Angels that I use it before my game and after a game, haven't missed a session yet. Like it just gets into part of their routine because it's passive too, because you can do something else. And that's actually a better way to do it, is to actually go, what's the thing that I don't like doing the most? And let me put this on and focus in and do it. So again, it's just something for a toolkit, and it fits in your backpack. Like, you can just take it wherever, and it looks like you're listening to headphones. Like it's just kind of that one of those technologies. Again, it's been around for a long time, but it's just been in the clinical environment that now it's being used in this other type of marketplace.
Yeah, I use it. Usually there's 2 times in the day where I'm most likely to use it. One is in the afternoon when I start to feel that burnout, maybe a little bit from like a really hard day of working. I'll start to use it to kind of pick myself back up, or transition from work to like maybe spending time with family or something like that, something to kind of relax me and get me out of that sympathetically driven state. Or I'll use it like right before bed in the evening when I'm doing like breath work or meditation or something like that. One of the other things that I'm gonna try, I haven't tried this yet, but have you guys heard of New Calm? You guys know what New Calm is?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I talked to you, Dallas, about it. So using that with it, because they have those biosignal discs, which I guess they're supposed to stimulate GABA and serotonin, which I believe this does as well,
Yeah.
releases those in the brain. And so I think if I use that plus their soundtracks plus that biosignal disc, it's going to be like, it's going to put me in a whole nother universe, just full recovery.
I used mine this morning, and I used it with a cold brew, and it got me going. I was like, I'm going to get a lot done right now.
Yeah.
So it is interesting as you start to kind of use it. But yeah, the big thing too is it's just trying to be the alternative. I mean, whenever you're talking with somebody, anxiety, when it gets to a point, it's like, what are you using to numb it? And when it gets to a point, some people might go on walks, maybe, a really healthy way to kind of manage anxiety. But, feeling for these athletes, especially on the sleep side of it. I mean, we talked to athletes too, and it was, some they were numbing it with either alcohol or some sort of substance. And so it's going, hey, you don't have to do that. Let's give you an alternative. So it's a bigger picture too of, from a performance side of things.
Absolutely. What is the difference? Because this is something else I've heard about, is transcranial direct current stimulation. What's the difference between CES and that?
Pretty simple, like logistical differences. The CES unit is alternating current, and the transdermal sticks, like on your head, and it's direct current from left to right or right to left. That's one direction. And the CES unit, the current goes 2 directions. That's it. There may be a difference in terms of the amount of energy. It's enough energy to make things perk up, right? But not so much energy to actually make the cells fire like you want to cause a seizure. So it's just energy underneath that. And that's why you could take like certain stacks of amino acids. I'd like a company, you can cut this out later if you want, but so there's a company I've just started playing with called Natural Stacks, and they don't sell GABA, they don't sell serotonin, they don't sell acetylcholine, they don't sell dopamine, but they sell the precursors to those in little convenient pill form. So I don't have to buy 40 different vitamins. They're all in the pills. And so I will take the precursors to dopamine and acetylcholine in the morning. I'll take the precursors to serotonin in the afternoon, and I'll take the precursors to GABA at night so I can sleep better. And you can take those things and then put on the CES unit, and you can get much more out of it as well, because you've prepared the soil, as it were, for the energy from the sunshine that's going to make the plants grow, or whatever the metaphor is you're going to use, but they work synergistically. So I'd like things like that, but it's just not enough energy to make the cells fire. You got to get this energy through the skull. So if you stick it on your forehead, you stick it on your head, the energy's got to be able to go through the skin and the skull and the fluid to get to the cortex. And that's the challenge for all of the technologies, is how to be able to do that and then have it be effective at doing something, activating the autonomic nervous system, part of that being the parasympathetic nervous system, activating that. It's a challenge, but you can actually do it. So the CES unit is one of the tools for that.
And a part of the kind of the journey that we're going on with Calmwaves as a company is we actually don't make any of our own products. Like we don't actually go and say, hey, here's our device, buy it. We're trying to source the best products and being able to provide it for the marketplace. So there are other CES units out there, but we just like this one the best. And we have a great relationship with them, and it's simple to use. So it's kind of just out of the box. So we're much more distributors in that sense of just trying to curate the best products and then build that educational piece around it. Go, this is why it's important to you. So that's why it's like, hey, natural stacks, or it's CES units, or it's direct neurofeedback units. It's like, all right, here's the best that we do, that we can provide, and this is why.
Yeah. Hey, also with the CES unit, Colin, you might, the uses, we use it both clinically. 25 years, my clinical patients had access to it. And our athletes have access to it. All of our athletes have it. But the research, there's hundreds of, there's a couple hundred of research articles on the technology. And there's a handful of articles that have come out in the last 5 years with professional gamers.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm old, right? I'm old. And so I don't think in terms of professional gamers. I think baseball, football, basketball, but video games, I'm just not that guy thinking about that. But there's research on the improved performance using CES units with professional gamers. And one of the research, this is peer-reviewed research article, called it brain doping.
Mm-hmm.
Is it brain doping for video gamers? Is it an unfair advantage for people trying to make money playing video games? And it's that effective at alertness, awareness, paying attention to the right thing at the right time, peacefully, calmly killing the guy on the screen, or whatever. And I thought that was fascinating to read that article.
Do you guys think that at some point this could become sort of a situation just like with chemical enhancements, that this is outlawed in some domains?
I'm gonna answer him before he does.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
I have we get the science one up. I don't think so, because it's just taking your natural brain state. it's like, are you going to outlaw meditation? Are you going to outlaw working out? Are you going to outlaw all of these other things? I mean, they might be able to say it for like video games that you can't wear it while you're playing, but it's not steroid use in the sense of I'm altering my body chemistry. With this, going back to that formula, it's just trying to take out all that interference so that your performance is better. But I'm going to see if my dad says something different.
No, why would they I mean, no, I don't see it happening. There's the short answer. I see rather more and more people are going to stack some amino acids at an hour before the competition, and they're going to use this half an hour before the competition or even during the competition. And it's going to enhance their performance without using drugs, pharmaceuticals of any kind. It's going to be all just making the human brain work better when you want it to work better. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, it's like eating better, or if it's working out more, or whatever that is. It's just supplying the brain for what it needs, but without doing it in a pharmaceutical way.
Yeah.
So I want to get to the direct neurofeedback. How does direct neurofeedback differ from traditional neurofeedback?
So traditional neurofeedback requires learning, and traditional neurofeedback is really powerful. We still use that with our athletes. It's an adjunct to the direct neurofeedback. But direct neurofeedback speeds up the process of getting the brain to the target goal. If the target goal is better focus and concentration, or higher IQ, or your brain just working more optimally, whatever the goal is that you define it as, limitless, whatever, better working. The direct neurofeedback doesn't require that the subject, the client, learn anything. It's a conversation between the client's brain and the system that takes place without any learning. You don't have to learn how to make small focus brain waves or inhibit delta activity, or you don't have to learn how to do any of that. You just have to sit there like you're doing right now. So the direct neurofeedback in some ways is far more like the CES unit that you're wearing than even traditional neurofeedback. It's as if the small energy that's working with the brain is driven by the person's own brainwave activity. So the system reads the brain waves for a second and then sends a little tiny amount of energy back to the brain, slightly faster or slightly slower than the person's dominant brainwave a second ago. And then the brain responds to that, and the system reads that response for a second, sends another bit of energy back to the brain for another second. And this back and forth conversation takes place for maybe 15, 20, 25 seconds in a little period of time. And you may have, in the course of a session, 10 or 15 or 20 of those little 20-second stimulation conversation things. It's amazingly good at getting the brain, as Dallas said earlier, to the middle of the bell curve and then beyond, at optimizing brain performance. I've never seen anything like it. It's probably the best mental health tool available in the world right now. Comes in different forms. There are 3 or 4 companies that, actually there's only 2 companies that make the technology. It might be sold under different brand names, but it's really good. I started doing some of the original research with Dr. Len Oakes on this concept about 28 years ago. So it's not like it's brand new. It's not like it just came around, but it keeps evolving. The technology keeps evolving. So that's why I say it's like neurofeedback version 4.0. to where it is now. As computers get faster, our understanding of the brain gets better. Yeah, so a treatment session could be 30 or 40, 45 minutes long for a treatment session. And a person might receive 12, 15, 20 sessions and achieve their treatment goals, as opposed to an hour-long neurofeedback session that there might be 40 or 50 or 60 sessions to achieve their treatment goal. So it just speeds up the process, saves a lot of time, saves a lot of money for clients in a clinical setting, certainly.
And for people who aren't familiar with traditional neurofeedback versus direct neurofeedback, it does need to be in more of a clinical setting, or more of somebody knowing how to operate it. So you can't just buy one and be like, yeah, I'm just going to use this one. Usually it's clinicians or people with some sort of medical license being able to do it. But yeah, it's a super powerful tool for any type of person that's with some sort of anxiety or PTSD or CTE, kind of all of that above. It heals your brain. It helps you to actually become the results that we've seen people is better vision. I mean, this is after the first session. This isn't even after multiple sessions. First session, better vision, no anxiety, more clarity, no brain fog. All of my thoughts that I've had that are all over the place are just singular, just down to one point. Like, again, it's one of those things that's like, oh, what did you feel? Because people all feel something different. But that is something it's a little bit harder to get out into the marketplace, because you have to either come to Scottsdale and work with us here, or you have to find somebody who knows what they're doing. And that's a part of like what we're doing too, is we are teaching people how to do direct neurofeedback as well. So that's another part of just because we feel like the best way we can help the most amount of people is by teaching people how to help people. So that's another type of marketing campaign that we have, is to be able to go to clinicians, or we're talking with drug rehab centers, we're talking with peak performance places, we're talking with therapists, and being able to say, hey, would you like to apply this to your practice? Because it's so powerful for these types of situations.
And what is the role of the therapist or the practitioner in operating the system?
The therapist, the practitioner, the licensed clinician needs to be able to supervise what's happening. Needs to do the good intake. Needs to really understand whether the person's brain is kind of fragile, like you might see in an anxiety disorder or some other kinds of clinical settings. Or if the person's brain is kind of hearty, but it's a football player who's had a number of concussions, whatever. So those brains are different, and the way our system works, which I really like, but the system that we use and we distribute to other clinicians, is there's only one variable. How much stimulation do you give a person so that you don't understimulate them or overstimulate them? And even if somebody gets overstimulated, what they feel is they may feel wired or tired for about 2 hours after the session, 3 hours. They might take a nap or whatever, and then they feel great. So even the worst case is not that bad. So our medical director will say the only bad session is one where somebody walks away and doesn't feel any different. So it's just trying to figure out how much. And all the way through the sessions, we're asking people, do you notice anything from when we started? Do you feel any difference? And if people go, no, we do another 20 seconds. And until we want to ideally go until they say, ooh, I feel different. There's more colors in the room. My neck is relaxed. My shoulders are relaxed. The parasympathetic nervous system is kicking in. And this is different. This is cool. So, and then you stop, because once the brain starts to make a shift, then you just let the brain take it from there. So that's kind of how a session goes. I've had people report significant changes in 40 stims, that, like 40 minutes on the clock of working with them. And I've had other people report significant changes in about 4 seconds. Come in with anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, all anxious coming in, and 4 seconds into it, they go, whoa, this is awesome. It's gone. It's over. So you never know as a clinician what that brain is going to be like that just walked into your room. And it's different every time it comes in with hydration or stress or whatever other variables the person has coming in the room. But it's remarkable at what it can do. So our medical director is going later this month to a major hospital on the East Coast that is tied in with the Department of Defense and a certain branch of the military. They're looking at possibly using it in their stroke center or with PTSD or service members who have experienced concussive blasts. There's a major study at UC San Diego right now with the Veterans Administration funding that, 175 veterans with a dual diagnosis of PTSD and some kind of head trauma. There are a number of studies on it. NFL study was done about retired NFL players, done about 12 years ago, I guess, 10 years ago maybe. And 26 retired NFL players with some kind of head trauma, and 25 out of 26 improved significantly. So it's good for that. That's at the left-hand side of the bell curve. Can we get them up healed to the middle of the bell curve and maybe a little bit better? And then we're finding there are really good applications with, like Dallas said earlier, people that you would put in the elite category and just squeezing out 2, 3, 4% more in performance by letting the brain work more optimally. So we're excited about that. I mean, it is, yeah, we're not making any claims that we're healing anything. We're not, it's all the FDA asterisk stuff, but it is FDA approved for certain things. We use it in the wellness category. Mm-hmm. So we'll put it there. Then the FDA says, yeah, go right ahead.
Going back to kind of what the therapist, it kind of actually, and this is actually a feedback we've gotten, kind of a resistance to it. It kind of takes the therapist out of the picture, where it usually, a therapist will be in the sense of the therapist is there to oversee everything, but it's really the computer and the brain talking back and forth to each other. So we talk about how you can take your worst therapist and make them the best therapist, because there's no connection that needs to take place. I don't need to connect with you. I don't need to talk about your trauma. I don't need to go through that process of building rapport so you can talk about your childhood or whatever the traumatic experience is. It's just, here's the computer, here's your brain. They're going to talk back and forth with each other, and I'm going to monitor through the process. So it really takes out that variable as well, where how good the therapist is the person to do it. So not saying that therapy is not great or that talk therapy is not good, but in the sense of repairing the brain, it takes it out of the picture. How we talk about it too is we're working on the hardware, not the software. So we want to make the hardware better so that the software works more, and that would be more on the mental performance side of things or therapist kind of side of things. So that's why we work really well with mental performance coaches, is because we go, we're not competing with you. We're trying to actually enhance what you're doing with your athlete or with your business exec, and taking out those brain interferences, those physical interferences. So that's kind of how we think about it.
Is this technology just working on the level of brainwave entrainment, or is this actually increasing neuroplasticity for people?
So traditional neurofeedback would be more on the training side of it. So traditional neurofeedback is it's just one way. It's just, I'm looking at the screen, I'm trying to increase my focus. I'm working out basically. That's what we use for athletes. And that's why it's kind of dually well. It's like, okay, this is, we're trying to increase your focus brain state. We're trying to increase your awareness brain state, all of those types of things. The direct neurofeedback is what we call flexibility training. So it's actually making your brain more flexible so that you can go into different types of brain states. So yes, it would be the neuroplasticity side of it, but you need to be in certain brain states at certain times. You just don't need to be stuck in those. So that's what PTSD is. PTSD is a stuck brain state. It's your brain going, I'm just going to keep you here. Whenever you get anxious, you don't want to get stuck in that brain state. So it allows you to go, hey, I just gave up a home run, but I'm not going to get into this anxious brain state. I'm actually going to be like, all right, whatever. I'm going to go and pitch the next pitch and do whatever it is. So that is what we're teaching. That's what the direct neurofeedback does, allowing it to have better flexibility. And then on top of it, we do the traditional neurofeedback, and that gives you that, okay, we're going to teach you what focus state looks like. We're going to teach you what flow state looks like. So that's why we use both of them together. But from a universal standpoint, if we were to pick one of the two, I would do direct neurofeedback every single time, because you need to have that flexibility before going into the traditional neurofeedback.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's pretty exciting to know that it does that it really increases plasticity.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way of measuring like how much plasticity is actually being affected, or how do you guys?
No, really I mean no, we don't make any claims to that, because what we do is kind of our way that we go about it is like, are you getting better? That's what we care about. Like, we don't do any brain mapping. We don't do anything like that, because there's so many variables that come into brain mapping. If you want to do like a really good brain map, we say go to Dr. Amen over at the Amen Clinic, because they do the whole $500,000 spec scan. They're just fantastic at what they do. But if you want measurement, we measure it based off of like, do you have anxiety when you get into the batter's box? No, I don't. Okay, that's good. Let's keep going. Like, whatever that interference is, that's what we really care about. Not so much of the, okay, we're going to look at your brain again, and this is, well, look at all these different things that's going. We care about more of the lifestyle side of things. That's where the science comes into play. There is some places that if it's like a double-blind study, you've got all the equipment that you're measuring that, and that's where the UC San Diego studies coming out will have more of those types of things of like, hey, we did these tests. These are the the plasticity that's changed, or the improvement that's changed over time. But we don't measure it from that sense.
I'm interested in the software, how that works, specifically the data processing algorithms that are involved. Can you tell me anything about how those are used to analyze the brain signals?
No.
Cool.
Well, there's two reasons for that. One is, I'm not a software engineer, and Bob Grove wrote this particular software that we use. There are just a few other software writers who can write this kind of software. But that would all be dancing near the proprietary stuff that none of the software writers would want.
Well, talk about. I think you can talk about what the software is picking up, because I think that's interesting. Is where you put the leads on your head. What is that? What is the software looking for?
Yeah, the software is able to take all of the information that's coming from two leads, EEG leads, and analyze the brainwave activity that's being picked up by those two leads, and then determine what exact signal to send back to the brain, all within a fraction of a second. So it is good at that. Excuse me, that It reads an EEG for a second, sends back a signal for a second. It reads the EEG for a second, sends back a signal for a second. And that's the software that, I mean, it's brilliant. I don't know how they do it. I don't know. I just know it's rare to have software that can do this. Like I said, there's only two manufacturers of the hardware, and I think there's only two, maybe three different programs that are used by everybody. Like maybe there's 3 writers for the software. So it's pretty sciencey stuff, and I don't have any of those tools to know how it's done.
You mentioned a name just a second ago who was involved in writing this software, the algorithms.
Tiny World. So Len Oaks first started the concept 28 years ago, 30 years ago, of can we marry traditional neurofeedback with sound and light machines, just like the sound and light machines you can buy on Amazon today for $400, $500. Well, they were around back then. I used them in my practice. I used them at my house. They were great entertainment devices, little flickering lights inside glasses and ear things that would go wah, 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 wah. And they were just cool. You hit a button, let's go to sleep. You hit a button, let's wake up. And they had prepared programs inside of them to drive the stimulation. So that idea was brain entrainment. Like looking at a campfire, the flickering lights puts you in a little altered brain state. Or looking at a Zamboni machine at a hockey game, you puts you in a different brain state. So Len said, hey, what if we marry the traditional neurofeedback hardware with some kind of a feedback through glasses like this and drive the stimulation through the glasses? So we did, and that's what the original research was on. Bob Grove was one of his computer software writers back in the day, a long time ago. And then as time went on, Len would call me and say, hey, lower the stimulation, less is more. And then put tape over the lights, less is more. And we got the same results as when the lights would just be blasting somebody. And then he said, put cardboard over the lights because less is more. Okay. And then I got challenged once. Somebody said, I know this works, but it can't have anything to do with those lights because you just covered up the lights. So here's $100,000 or some huge amount of money. A rich guy wrote a check and said, go find out why this works. And he went to Livermore Labs up in Northern California, and they said it had nothing to do with the glasses and the lights, and that's stimulation. Said it was a little teeny tiny electrical impulse going from the amplifier through the wire to the lights. So they cut off the glasses, threw them away. And for years, the provider could just lay that over the guy's shoulder. And the brain would pick up that little faint energy pulsing out of that wire. So now it's evolved to the next generation. So it's more efficient, more effective, looks cooler. And it's, it's that same principle of your brain is talking to the software that's sending a signal back through a 2-directional amplifier and changing the way your brain works and improving it, unsticking it. That's one way that you look at it. Unstick it where it's stuck from either trauma or a head injury or something. Unstick it, let it work more efficiently. Reboot it like a computer. Let it work better. Whatever metaphor you want to use for it, it's really helpful. So that's where Bob Grove was involved. I was involved back Bob Grove was involved back in the day. And then other guys have come and gone working for Len, Dr. Oakes. And our medical director was once his medical director, Dave Dubin. And the other software writers were once part of the team there. Everybody in this field knows each other somehow. At least there are a bunch of core people who know each other from way back in the day, 25, 30 years ago.
For practitioners who are interested in implementing direct neurofeedback with you guys guiding them, what kind of training and support do you provide through your training system?
For our clients, I guess the practitioners, right? We want them to be able to help lots of people. It may be possible to help. Let's pick a number, 100 people a year, really a lot, and maybe twice that or 3 times that. But let's just say
how many did you say again? 100?
I'm just picking the number 100. I haven't really done the math on it, but like we have a friend that we sold a unit to, have sold 2 units to in a small town in California, and she goes down to El Salvador 4 times a year, and will spend a month in El Salvador, and she in this little village at this little school, little missionary school down there, and she took it down there a couple of months ago. She saw like 30 people a day for 2.5 weeks down there. And some of the changes in the children and their parents was just dramatic. So the potential is to see lots and lots and lots of people and help lots and lots and lots of people. But if we figure the technology, I've had my amplifier box for 10 years now. I think it could go another 10 years. So each system can potentially help a lot of individuals. So we want to get them into the hands of providers, healthcare providers, whether they're medical doctors or they run wellness centers or chiropractors or psychologists, MFTs, whatever it might be. And then they can train technicians to do this too. We can put them through training. So we do I do about 8 hours of training with people when they buy our systems. And our medical does another 6 hours or so of training, remote training over Zoom or whatever. I can travel to a location. He does it all out of Beverly Hills office there. And then we have ongoing Zoom meetings once a week. We have a Zoom meeting everybody comes to, and I'll do some training for a while, and then people can sort of share their stories, share their victories, ask their questions, whatever. So that's ongoing. And we just have a community of people that come and can be a part of that. So that's sort of the process. If I need to travel to a location, then I'll get on a plane and go. And we just build that into that price for that unit. The units aren't clinicians listening. It's important to kind of know we look at this way more as an investment than as a cost. Mm-hmm. Most of the things I ever purchased as a clinician were a cost. If I bought testing because I wanted to know stuff, it was a cost. Maybe I could get it back, but it was a cost. This is an investment. I did numbers one day comparing these systems with purchasing apartment buildings at what it can generate in terms of gross income and net income at the end of a year. And these are way better investments than apartment buildings or Airbnbs or whatever, because we can train technicians to run them. They can be a bolt on to an existing practice and can generate, a substantial amount of money for a clinician, a medical doctor, whomever. And we get paid to help people. That's what we do. That's how we make our living. And the more successful we are at helping people, the better living we make. It's just who we are. So we can help people expand their practice in the scope of the type of patient they can see, but also in just the income generated. So like I treated a young man, he was a baseball player, had an auto accident, hit some ice, rolled his truck, went through the windshield of the truck, laid in the snow for 8 hours in a field, found by a farmer the next day, airlifted to a hospital in wherever, Nebraska or something. And he was, they called his parents in California, said, you need to fly out here, say goodbye to your son. A year later, he was still alive. He was at a brain rehab center in Southern California. And a year after that, he walked into my office. And he said, I want to finish college. I'm done playing baseball, but I want to finish college. But first, I have to relearn how to write my name. So I worked with him for about a year. And I would, I wouldn't just as a therapist have had anything to offer him except supportive therapy while he's going through this awful time. But with the direct neurofeedback, I had a lot to offer him. And we got a unit for his mom, who was a nurse. We trained his mom, and his mom continued treatment for another year after that. And then he just recently got married. He's finished college. He's like, it's like nothing had ever happened. It's an amazing story. So it just expanded the number of people I could help in our little town in the mountains in California. So people would drive an hour, 2 hours to come up and get help with it. It's very powerful technology. So, practitioners that might be listening to this, we'll teach you how to make it a bolt-on to your practice. You will help more people than you ever thought you were able to help, and they'll be grateful. So you'll be able to help people that nobody else in your town will be able to help.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I have a couple other questions. I know we're getting a little long in the tooth here. With all the advancements right now in artificial intelligence and machine learning, how do you envision the integration of those into the field of neurofeedback or just brain performance in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that artificial intelligence would make the direct neural feedback work better. I don't know we'd squeeze anything more out of that. I do think this is scary because I'm a talk therapist, right? For 35 years. How did that make you feel? I'm doing that. I think those of you who are psychologists and therapists, man, we are either going to learn how to integrate artificial intelligence conversations into what we're doing now, or we're going to be replaced. We are going to be replaced. If we don't take the lead in using that technology, people are just going to go to a kiosk and do talk therapy with artificial intelligence. Now, I say that, people are going, oh, there's no way. 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I was having conversations with a computer at UCLA over my computer that you type in, it was artificial intelligence, right? You type in whatever and get your answer back in a Rogerian therapy format. It was called Lucy, but it was a big computer at UCLA running this study, and it was good. It was a good therapist. It asked all kinds of the right questions at the right time, and it was good. That was 8 years ago. This like GPT 3.5 right now was going to be 4.0 and then 5.0, and it's going to ask better questions and help guide people looking for talk therapy better than humans can do. Now, there's always intuition, and they're not as good at thinking of meaning in a situation as humans are. We can take patterns and make meaning out of it better than artificial intelligence can. And we have intuition that the computer doesn't have. So I give it that. But there are all kinds of medical doctors who better start thinking this through, and mental health professionals better start thinking this through, because it's going to be our competition 10 years from now. But it's not going to make the direct neurofeedback work better, just like it's not going to make the CES unit you're wearing work better.
Yeah, I just looked at, I was on Twitter today and I looked up neurofeedback, and there was a company that was saying they're doing AI with neurofeedback, adding kind of, because it's, buzzwords and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, traditional neurofeedback, you could probably get better prompts and be like, okay, you now based off of, this level, you should go here now, or based off of your brainwaves here, you should go here. So it might help in that sense, build that kind of platform out. But you could do that now if there was enough, use case for it, and people could build it. So because it is, for the direct neurofeedback, it's still basing it off your brainwaves. It's basing it off of your situation. It's not basing it off of history and time of, with talk therapy or anything like that, where it can just pull, the best questions or the best theories out there. So it's just a little bit different in that respect. But yeah, it is interesting to see I just saw the new, I don't know if you saw it. Did you see there's the brain tech that you can put on the back of your head now? It's the neurofeedback, where they basically, they're afraid that they're going to use it at work, or you're going to have to wear it, and they're going to be able to see like your focus state and how you're doing. It's an EEG, but there's a video of a guy who was making a Tesla go forward. That was the big thing. Is he had the Tesla over here, and he was wearing it, and he's the CEO of the company, and he's like, watch, I'm going to do algebra, or I'm going to do math problems, and I'm going to make the Tesla move forward. And it's basically, stuff that we could do on our computer right now, where we would just make the video run. We have a, traditional neurofeedback, but again, it's so exciting because people aren't aware of it as much. But, that'll be kind of the interesting thing is when people become more aware of it, to see like, is this actually something that's been around for a long time, or just kind of entering the marketplace? Because what he's doing is he's just going into a focus state, and the brain's picking it up, and then it's saying, make the Tesla run when you go over this.
If this, then that.
Yeah, it's just an if this and that, and putting it to a Tesla. I mean, we do that with videos. Make this video run. If you focus enough, if you do math problems, it'll make the video run. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what comes out from a marketing standpoint.
The military's tried to use brainwave applications for all kinds of weapons platforms. It was 25 years ago that had interesting conversations with interesting people who were colleagues and friends of mine who were working at a military base with black projects, and they have electrodes in many of the helmets for certain kinds of aircraft to help pilots when they get overwhelmed by stress to fly the craft. That's 25-year-old technology, 20-year-old technology. And they tried integrating it into helmets of helicopter pilots who had weapons on their helicopters, so that it would just be thought, I want to blow that up over there, and the weapons would respond and put up there, so that the pilot could keep doing other tasks. And that didn't work at all, because they were blowing up the wrong thing. And so everybody was at risk in the whole airbase because of what they were doing, the whole test site. So some things, the electrodes and brainwaves are good for. Some things not so much. Some things it's just better if somebody points a joystick and pushes a trigger. Artificial intelligence might be able to refine some of those things and try to figure out the intention of, what the person is trying to do with their brain waves and interpret that. But why do that when you can just press a button or point a pointer? Just do it. So I don't know how much artificial intelligence is going to help in the field that we're in exactly. Peak performance, I don't know that it's going to make the tools that we have that much more efficient. They're already super cool, efficient. I mean, it'll probably be artificial intelligence designing the way to make it more efficient. But still, it's the human brain that's got to adjust to it. The billions and billions and billions of brain cells, the numerous systems that are inside the brain, the brain's got to do it on its own, got to make its own changes, improvements. Probably didn't answer your question at all, but it's a fun conversation to have.
I think it's a complex question because right now there's so much hype around artificial intelligence, and everyone who comes out with something that uses artificial intelligence, or a lot of people are just building their entire company off of the ChatGPT API. And it's like, well, do you even have a business model? Does it make sense? And in a lot of cases, I think the answer is no. It's similar to what happened in Silicon Valley I think it was around 2010 with gamification. Gamification was everything. And if you had a company that used gamification somehow, well, you were going to get funded.
It's like blockchain probably 5 years ago. If you had blockchain in your title, you would get funded. So AI is the next thing, and companies are going to try to bolt on AI neurofeedback. AI, blockchain would be kind of hard to do, but we're going to run this and it's going to be so more efficient. But it may not at the end of the day be that much more efficient when it comes to the brain side of it. And here's the other thing is, going back to, you can go back to Neuralink or, some of this brain tech that, make it more wearable is when it comes to brain activity and data privacy. We had a conversation with an athlete, kind of got angry at us because we were presenting what we were doing. And he was like, oh, this is just going to be another thing that people are going to use against me. He was kind of at the end of his career, and it's just like StatCast StatCast hurt a lot of guys' careers because they're like, hey, your exit velocity is not as high as it was 5 years ago. We're not going to sign you. Or, look at these trends. So they took about, we think about that more from a data privacy standpoint of going, we don't tell anybody what you're doing, but you're going to have a team that comes in and goes, hey guys, I want you guys to wear these at all times. And we're going to do these measurements and see what it is. And organizations can work against you. So that's what we talk about with athletes too, is like, it's coming. Somebody's going to do it. We're just at the beginning of the bell curve to help you actually improve on it. We're not just taking stats on your reaction time. We're helping you to get better. So that's even another conversation, is about data privacy. If they go, hey, by the way, Google is going to ask you to wear this head thing that's going to help you improve your brain. But in reality, they're just taking your brain data and going, you know what? You weren't as focused as you were last week. What's going on?
That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough with athletes, especially, like you say, toward the end of the career. I can imagine a time where everybody's got to take some kind of continuous performance reaction test before a game, and the lineup will be chosen. Oh, that guy's fatigued today. He's not playing.
Yep.
Like, what? What are you talking about? So yeah, technology's got its place, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We can certainly overthink it and overuse it.
I want to give you guys an opportunity to, for other people watching, to find out more about what you guys do. So where can people find more information on Calm Waves, the CES units, and the direct neurofeedback for practitioners in particular?
Calmwaves.com. That's the best place to go. We've got the Calm box on there with the CES unit Calm box, with a bunch of information, lots of videos, lots of education. We'd love to talk to anybody about this. You can personally reach out to me at dallas@calmwaves.com. You can reach out to my dad at doug@calmwaves.com. But we would just love to have conversations with people about this, people who are interested in it, because everyone's in their own unique kind of place. But our goal is to make it fit your situation and whatever you're trying to do, whatever your goals are. But we would love to talk to you. We've got a link on there on our website, on our homepage, with a 15-minute discovery call. Feel free to pick a time. I'd love to have a conversation with anybody who's out there.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure having you. This was
Thank you,
great.
Colin.
Yeah, thanks for putting this on. And I'm sure we'll have more conversations about brain data security at some point and how that applies to the ethics of the world.
Yeah. I think there's so many rabbit holes that could be explored based on this conversation. So we'll have to follow it up at some point.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it again.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys, and everybody watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I will ask, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, please give it a rating, a 5-star rating. It would really mean the world to me. And follow the podcast, share it with a friend, share the YouTube channel with a friend. Anything you can do, I would be eternally grateful to you. And thanks so much. I'll see you next time. And let me know what you think about this if you're watching on YouTube in the comments below. Thanks so much. Have an amazing day.